One person is going to stay back and he's the member, he's the owner, he's the director. You call all the fancy names as far as possible, but this is the person who is going to run the business. Normal company like a public or a private limited company is that there are a lot of formalities, there are a lot of documentations which come in picture, and you need to follow all of them in order to make a successful run of your company. Good morning and welcome to the first session of Unit 5 in Company Law. And in this session, we are going to speak about the one-person company. Is it really possible that a single person can run a company? Now, when you start thinking about this concept itself, it looks a little bit fancy, but then the provisions of law will definitely allow people to have a one-person company, no doubt about it. So what is this one-person company? How does it run? What is the legal stature about it? Let's have a quick look into it. Now, starting here, the one-person company. The one-person company means a company formed with one single person as a member, unlike the traditional manner of having at least two members. Now, what is the biggest functionality here is that one person is going to stay back and he's the member, he's the owner, he's the director. You call all the fancy names as far as possible, but this is the person who is going to run the business altogether. So now what is going to happen here is that the overall control of the company is going to come in hands of a single person. So there's not going to be a partnership, there are not going to be board of directors, there's not going to be a nomination, but then the single person is going to run the company. Followed by the concept of this single person company or a one person company is not alien to the world. That means probably there are many other countries in the world which follow the ideology of a single person. Through the years, this concept has been legally recognized in the United Kingdom, in the USA, in the China, in Singapore, UAE, Pakistan, everywhere. We have been able to see the concept of single person company or one person company. So definitely not to forget, not to go across. This is one of the kind of concept that has been followed in so many countries across the globe. Now, what is happening in a single person company is that the ideology, the thought process, the visualization, the concept of running the company sticks to one person, only to one ideology alone. So this person cannot step out and start thinking about having multiple people inside the organization. Now, moving forward, the one-person company concept in India, when we are going to speak this concept with respect to one particular organization, one person only. Now, this was actually given by Dr. J.J. Irani committee, which was reported in the May 31st, 2005. Dr. J.J. Irani was former member of the Tata Sons Group altogether, and he was also the managing director and CEO of Tata Steel. So he was the committee member which had submitted the report which promised the escalation of entrepreneurs in the marketplace, making their contribution to the economy equally important. It's very, very effective that I would like to call upon. Hence, the recognition of a single person economic entity itself is going to lighten a path to the small traders, artisans and other service providers to venture into the business by expanding their opportunities, limiting them with the liability of minimal procedural and compliance process. Now just look into the concept, the methodology altogether here. When you start thinking about the process, when you start thinking about the ideal factors that, there's going to be a single entity concept, there's going to be a single person who's going to come into picture, and that person is going to run, that person is going to rule the entire system. What is very, very effective here is that we need a procedure, we need a policy where the compliance, where the roles of activity, where the roles of doing the company's responsibility should not come in too much of documentation. Now, what happens in a normal company like a public or a private limited company is that there are a lot of formalities, there are a lot of documentations which come in picture, and you need to follow all of them in order to make a successful run of your company. But in a single person, I don't want to put that burden on that single person and make the company even more a tighter space to walk in. But rather, I would like to look into that single company as an entity, given space to the entrepreneur, where he would be able to walk in, where he will be able to run the organization like any other organization in this world. So that's why I would always say that then the committee came up with this report of promoting that one-person company in India. Our ideology was very straightforward in terms of promoting the company to the maximum level possible, where we will be able to see that every single entrepreneur is able to contribute to the economy, is able to build upon the economy, and he is being given that freedom, he is being given that space to come out and produce the best of his ability. Moving forward, the advantages and the importance in terms of consideration of the legal factors of one-person company. Now, this is the simplest concept introduced under the Companies Act of 2013, though that itself underlines the fact very clearly here that single-person company is the simplest concept, so there's no much of complication at all. Every single complication has been ruled out of the one-person company. The concept has definitely swayed its way from sole proprietorship. It has moved away. Why? Because sole proprietorship and the single person company is slightly different. It's just moving away, and the perplexities of two concepts seem to be interchangeable. Of course, from time to time, we have been moving it. We have been alternatively using it all together, understanding the concept as a whole, and hence becoming essential. Now, when we moved away from that single proprietorship and we started coming into a one-person company, the changes that have been brought in by the Companies Act of 2013 go forward and mention this factor, clearly stating that at some point of time, interchangeably, certain laws are flexible, they can be used, and we can build the system. So we are not going to go back and say that the sole proprietorship is ruled out. It's thrown back. No, on the other side, we are going to make it very, very clear, stating that there is going to be a functionality, there is going to be a ruling, there is going to be an understanding altogether in terms of building up the concept, in terms of taking the company forward. So that's why I would always say that this is a very, very essential factor altogether. Now, moving forward, let me also try to make you understand the exemptions for OPC and the advantages of OPC. Now, what I'm going to do here is that an OPC, then one-person company, is exempted from stringent legal compliance of general meeting, board meeting, quorums, voting power factor, and inclusion of cash flow statements and other things in the financial aspect. Now, look at that. A public limited company or a private limited company is again subjected to stringent laws like that of the general meeting, board meeting, quorums, voting, inclusion of cash flow. All these things are mandatory. You cannot go back tomorrow and say that, sir, I have not been running this company. I don't want to publish the annual reports, or I don't want to be a part of the board meeting or any other factor. You need to participate. You need to go back and tell people very, very clearly that at any given point of time, the laws will remain the laws. You cannot go and interchange it. You cannot make it flexible. So, for example, if you are a company like Infosys, Reliance, or Tata Motors, you will not be in a position to go back and tell your shareholders that I'm not conducting a meeting today. I'm not going to publish my annual audit reports. On the other hand, if you are a single person or a one-person company, you have that flexibility, saying that you don't have to follow the rules. You don't have to go back and tell your financial statement, your cash flow, your revenue statements. No, we don't want that. On the other side, what does the company law say is that the board meeting must be conducted if there is an exclusion. It's also exempted from all the transaction of business. You just have to run the business smoothly. You just have to show that you are capable of going forward and running the business like any other entity altogether. Now, you don't have to have a ballot function. Further, the appointment of board of directors and other factors are completely removed out of the scenario. So a one-person company becomes even more interesting journey where where you are able to run the company independently, taking your own calls, whether it is going to be a profit, it's going to be a loss, or whatever scenarios under which you are going to face. So this is going to be a very, very exciting journey for each one of us in terms of understanding the factor. Plus, I would also say that the appointment of company secretary is also not essential. So that means you don't even have to worry about the factor that will there be a company secretary, the minutes of meeting, again making a note of it, his qualification, whether he's qualified enough to run the board. So you are completely left out of all these questions and you just have to run the company with your own decisions. The prohibitions that are being faced by the one-person company. Now, a one-person company faces prohibition for any non-banking financial investment activities, converting it into a wholly subsidiary unit of an OPC and issuing any kind of employee stock scheme. Now, this is something that is very, very serious where the company law comes into picture. Being a single person, will I be able to start an NBFC, that is a non-banking financial company, or will I be able to start a bank? Definitely not. So anything that's related to a non-banking financial company or a banking finance kind of thing, I am completely not allowed to do so. That company law says that any kind of employee stock exchange options or running a financial services will not be coming under this purview. Why? Because the act says that it also frustrates the whole motive of OPC, converting into the factors of financial services, becoming a nominee. To a large extent, this defeats the purpose itself, as introduction mentioned in the committee report. Now, why? Because single person committee was brought in order to make the entrepreneur enabled to do the business by himself. But moment it comes to this finance, the lending and serving purpose, lending, borrowing purpose altogether, this becomes even more challenging, which means you need to have multiple people, you need to have multiple borrowings coming into picture. So that defeats the ideology. So that's why we say here very clearly, if it is going to be a one-person company, we are not going to entertain him at any point of time to get into the activities of doing business in terms of banking or financial services. Now, the concluding factors that we are going to look here in terms of an one-person company. In the concluding factor, I would say at a superficial level, it seems to be simple and attractive, but yet it is something to do with a great deal in terms of imperfection, like impositions and restrictions. So I would always say that when it comes to a superposition, when a restriction kind of thing, it has a lot of challenges inbuilt. It might look very simple when I say that it's a one-person company, fine, it is there, you will be able to run it, but then there are challenges which are coming inside. The one thing is that the resulting in slow progress of small entrepreneurs, rather it can perceive that it has indirectly discouraged them even to incorporate an OPC. So with the amount of discouragement, the amount of factors that are inbuilt, the challenges that are inbuilt in OPC, most of the entrepreneurs do not want to go in for this kind of facility. Why? Because it does not provide a growth to them in the long run. Being a public limited company, being capable of handling amount, taking in revenue from the public, actually makes the company grow faster and go long. But instead, becoming a one-person company and not able to see progress to that extent, where you are being slowed down by the economic factors altogether, you will not be able to make a growth. So that's why I always say that this is a kind of imperfection that we can talk about. So there are challenges which we see that in one-person company, which demotivates most of the entrepreneurs by not taking that kind of format. Plus, to spruce the incorporation of OPC, certain reliefs and exemptions must be made available, such as permit companies, whether they are Indian or foreign, allow them to start taking in terms of the export licensing. So what we see here is that the one-person company does not get a greater significance in the market. People do not recognize it, and in sense, most of the time people go back and ask whether the existence of company is true or not. So many a times for the entrepreneur entrepreneurs, it becomes difficult to go again and again, re-establish themselves and start talking the same thing. Sir, we are the same company. But then that becomes quite difficult for them. So that's why most of them do not get into this activity at all. So that's why I would say that this is not the kind of company that people are into looking in terms of development, in terms of activity altogether. So that's why I would say that the purpose gets defeated at some point of time. With that, I would like to come to the conclusion for the one-person company session. I hope and believe that through this session, the lot of information that has been shared will be of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming session, we are going to see some other formats of company, what are all the other surviving stand for the entrepreneurs today under the Companies Act. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. And please do watch the sessions and please do gather more information. Keep learning. Thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session today.